Do you think the issue of school bullying has come to the fore much more so recently?
Is the house burning down? I would say no. But is it enough of a concern for us to know that we want to give it some attention? The answer is yes. Can things be done better? I would say we do want to do better, and we do need to do better.
The MOE figures on school bullying shows about 0.6% happening in secondary schools. What accounts for this difference?
Well, the MOE figures actually represent the bullying figures that have been reported. And if you understand the whole spectrum of bullying behaviour, it could stem from actually some of these things could be careless remarks, insensitive remarks, all the way right down to the other end of the spectrum where there's physical bullying. And a lot of times, or we find actually sometimes that the children or the students may not report some of these things to us. So understandably, if your figures come from self-reporting, and if you ask them, have you been bullied in the past year? I would imagine that the figures would be different from what we have as official reported figures. But that does not mean that we only look at those that are officially reported, because every case that occurs is a case that we are interested in, and we would like to see how we can address it and support the kids.
When you say that the figures shared are the cases that are reported, on the ground we hear a lot of cases being reported, but that is not reflected in the official statistics. So I'm curious as to when you say the cases are reported, do you mean reported and investigated?
So it's a whole mixed bag of different types of cases. So some are reported, investigated, and eventually some of these are resolved without the need for further action. Some of these are actually reported, acted upon, and there are some conclusions that are then reported and stated. And a lot of these figures are also, if it's from data that you have obtained through self-reporting. Some of it could have been also addressed by peers, or some of it could have been resolved on their own. So there is a whole variety of different situations on the ground.
Within MOE, what does it take for an incident to be locked in as a school bullying case?
To be locked in with, to be recorded as part of that data, it depends. It depends, because if you look at bullying, we expand it to the term hurtful behaviour. And hurtful behaviour can range from insensitive remarks to persistent, consistent behaviour that's out to hurt. It could be in terms of social bullying, it could be online, it could also be very, very egregious physical bullying. So as each of these cases gets surfaced, it's seldom surfaced as, okay, lock it in. It's surfaced as something that is an allegation, or really it's something that a child maybe tells a teacher. And with that, what happens after that is really the teacher would understand what the situation is, would understand the circumstances, and actually make an assessment with reference to whether or not this is something that should be officially recorded, or if this is something that actually is something that they can, the children or the students can resolve, or the teacher can facilitate a resolution, or is it something that warrants actually actual disciplinary proceedings or actions. So it's a whole variety. But at the end of the day, when there are disciplinary outcomes or proceedings that happen, some of these things, these would then be recorded and locked in.
Technically speaking, bullying has to be a repeated behaviour. What about one-off incidents? How does MOE view them?
I think to MOE and to schools, what we are concerned about is the whole spectrum of hurtful behaviour. So it's not about the technical definition of what the incident is, but really what is its impact on the children, on the students. And for each case that causes hurt, these are cases that we are very concerned about, and we are committed to following up on and to pursuing and to addressing.
what I'm hearing is that any kind of hurtful behavior can potentially be deemed as bullying behavior.
No, any type of hurtful behavior is something that is worth the school's attention.
I suppose we are asking because some parents are concerned that if my child is disadvantaged once by a bully, a well-known bully, let's say, but the behavior is not repeated, then is that still a bullying case?
It may not be called a bullying case, but it is hurtful behavior, and therefore the school will act on it. So when the case is, when the parent calls me, I wouldn't go, what is my definition of bullying? I would go, how is your child? Can I follow up? Can I have a conversation with your child? And can I understand wherein is the hurt? Can I understand who was involved? And can I address it as an adult in the situation? If your friend was out of line or your friend was wrong, then can I address it? So I do not have a matrix where I go, this is bullying, this is not bullying, and therefore any behavior that causes hurt to our children is behavior that we want to address, because we take that seriously. Yeah. Every case.
Say my child has been bullied and I call the teacher. What is the SOP after that phone call?
For MOE, we do support schools with a range of resources and very clear guidelines with reference to how to approach when such cases arise. So as a parent, if the parent calls up the school or engages the teacher and says, my child told me this, and say this is a primary school. Of course, what happens is that the teacher would need to have a talk with the child. And have a talk with the child, understand what the issue is and what the incident is all about. The teacher usually would then engage the parent and say, this has happened in school, and this is what's going on. And then if there are allegations against classmates or other people, the teacher would need to investigate and to understand actually if this is a relational bullying situation, actually who was involved, and understand the facts of the case. Some cases are a little bit more complex, and therefore they take a little bit of time, but that would be the investigation phase. And in the course of the investigation, we do also encourage schools to keep in touch with the parents. But sometimes because the investigations can get a little bit more complex, then it may take a longer time. After which, when all the facts of the case are in, and there is an assessment that actually in this case, some of the children may need some support. So sometimes the school counsellor is brought in because it's about supporting the well-being of the child. Sometimes if it's an egregious case and it is clear that a child has done wrong, then there are clear disciplinary repercussions that are there. But in certain cases where there are complexities, then more investigation needs to be done. So all these things happen within the school itself. Each school has what we call a case management team. So once the facts are in, actually the team comes together and assesses what are the next steps. And with that next steps, if it's discipline, then discipline. But with disciplining a particular child, it's also balanced up with counselling and remediation and helping rehabilitate and helping the child to learn from his mistakes and be able to understand the kind of negative impact he or she had, and then be able to reconcile. So these are all the things that are done in a case that goes in a linear manner. But in certain cases where there are complexities, then depending on the complexity, then the amount of effort taken in to look at the evidence and the conclusions may be quite different.
The case management team is made up of people who are changing all the time. What is the case
management team usually is chaired by one of the school leaders. So either at least one of the vice principals. The case management team usually would include the relevant year head. So whether it's a P5, whether it's a Sec 2 case, the relevant year head. And in certain schools, it would also include the discipline teacher or subject head or the discipline master. And then, if relevant, the support of the school counsellor is brought in, where the well-being of the kids needs to be supported. And the teacher would bring some of these issues through the case management team, and the case management team then assesses, looks at the case holistically, and then arrives at a conclusion of how then to move forward. So it is a formal protocol, but essentially schools then adapt it to the unique context that they are in, because there are 350 schools with a variety of different profiles and established structures and processes already. So this is how it works within the school. We also have training materials and resources, and in fact we even have an online portal where we talk about some of these behaviours and how to tackle some of these behaviours, and how to address the issues that are there, and how to look at it from, or how to perform the investigation. But we do recognise also that with 350 schools and schools with students of a variety of different profiles, we do also give some autonomy to the schools to be able to recognise that with the students that I have, with the culture that I've established, actually with some of these cases should be reported up. Some of these cases, actually let's address it at whatever level they are. So there is a central set of protocols, and these are customized, adapted, and used in the local school with full consideration of the different profiles and factors that are there.
So what I'm hearing is that MOE does have standard operating procedure as guidelines, but each school is also free to adapt according to their own conditions.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say? I mean, the sense that we're getting from the ground is that there is really no incentive, if you like, for the schools to escalate these cases, because then it could be, I don't know, a black mark against the school. Because I certainly don't want to come across like every other month I have got a bullying case registered, clocked in at MOE. Do you think that the people on the ground might feel that way?
No, definitely not. I think when they escalate the case or they lock in the case, it's really to reflect that these are the cases that are happening, and actually logging in some of these cases, and as they get reflected, it may indicate that some of these schools would appreciate greater support, but it's never a reflection of whether the school is a good school or not a good school. So I don't think this is a perception on the ground. And escalation is not something that's a judgment of the school or the school leaders or the teachers. Essentially what we want schools to be able to do is really to know every child, to know what's happening. So for teachers, it's what's happening within the classroom or whether it's within the CCAs. And schools also have year heads to know what's happening at the level. And essentially to be able to recognize that as we are sensitive to what's happening with reference to some of this behavior, that if some of it needs to be escalated so that it can be addressed at the school level a little bit more systemically, or some of it requires a little bit more support for the school. These are things that are naturally surfacing. So I don't think that's a barrier for reporting.
The feedback we got from some teachers is that the workload is understandably heavy and they don't have the time or the resources to pay attention to school bullying cases. Do you think MOE needs to bring in external and independent parties?
Fundamentally, if you look at what's on the teacher's plate, there are many things that are on the teacher's plate, one of which is taking care of the well-being of the students, and also ensuring that the classroom or the school environment is a caring and enabling environment, so that everybody comes to school, everybody is able to learn and to play and to grow together. So within that plate itself, in terms of bullying, when it surfaces, it can potentially sap quite a bit of the teacher's time. So I am not surprised if you have heard feedback that the teachers find that these are cases, when bullying cases surface, that is challenging. So in response to this, or actually preemptively, we do recognize that as teachers feel like this, they know that they are not alone. And when bullying cases or allegations of bullying surface, we do also help them to recognize that there is an ecosystem of support in the school.
Like such as what?
So as I mentioned earlier, we have the teachers. The teachers are taken care of by a year head. So sometimes a year head takes care of 2 levels of students. Sometimes there's a year head and there's an assistant year head. And the year head actually provides guidance. The year head is able to come in and provide some advice on how to deal with certain cases that may be a little bit more complex. And the year head also sometimes help to engage parents and brings in other members into a case management team that helps to deliberate over how to address some of these issues. In addition to the year head, of course, there are various dedicated personnel looking into discipline, looking into student well-being, that would come in and really support the teacher in managing some of these cases. The more complex cases, then eventually also the school leaders get involved, and with the more complex cases, in terms of engagement of parents, there is the active engagement as well.
The sense we are getting from the ground is that school teachers may not be the best people to deal with bullying cases, because in bullying cases there's always 2 sides to it, and the teachers are maybe closer to one side compared to another. So it's going to be difficult for teachers to remain neutral. Is bringing in a third party independent professional, for example, into the schools is something that MOE will consider?
Well, our teachers are all professional. So in terms of taking sides, I truly believe that our teachers on the ground are not naturally inclined to say, I take this person's side or the other person's side. And part of the training that we give to schools and the protocols have to do with actually when there are allegations and investigation is mounted, is to actually gather the evidence and to be evidence informed in the approach that we take. So bringing in a third party in the ecosystem of support that I spoke about earlier would mean the year head comes in. Or in certain cases where certain students need further support in terms of well-being, the school counsellor could come in and support the well-being. So we have equipped every school with enough of some of these resources so that the support can come in and actually deal with the case, deal with each case. In bringing in an independent party, that is something that we are open to considering, but we do need to understand what the role of that independent party is, because for us, as I mentioned earlier, some of the other allied educators' support would already be there, and it is a lot more swift and effective to have somebody on site like this.
Okay. So because I'm listening to you, there is a concerted attempt to keep everything within the MOE and schools ecosystem, right?
Okay.
So that means you must have so much confidence in the system that it's working, whereas some parents, I suppose, and journalists like myself are thinking, what about an independent who is independent, can come inside to in the best neutral position, say that, can we do this? Almost like mediation, if you wish, you know. So you have just said it, because if you keep everything within the ecosystem, you feel that you can react very quickly, because everyone is already on the ground. So that's one reason. Any other reasons that all the efforts to manage has to be within the system?
I mean, not that it has to be within the system, but because the number of incidents that could be surfaced is the number, and to be able to respond to these, of course, some of it that can be addressed on the ground will be addressed on the ground, but in more complex cases where there is a need for more support for the investigation or for looking at what the facts of the case are and drawing conclusions, we do then bring in other areas which are not totally entirely only kept within the school system. So in certain cases that are surfaced and they are complex enough, actually within the system, the cluster superintendent goes in, and the cluster superintendent looks after about 10, 12, 14 schools within each of the zones, and the cluster superintendent sometimes goes in and looks at some of the facts of each case and then forms or becomes that independent outside eye just to make an assessment of whether or not things are done or things are in order. So we have different interventions and different strategies, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. Because if I say I'm bringing an independent person, and for all bullying cases, they get channeled to the independent party to arbitrate or to intervene, you would imagine the kind of load that's there. So it's a tiered approach, and with that tiering, in complex cases, we do then recognize that somebody else needs to come in, and somebody else does come in.
You talk about the complex cases, which are hopefully very few right at the top, but below surely there are the simpler cases that could be festering. What are you going to do about these cases?
So you are exactly right that we do want to make sure that as the cases surface, that we address them swiftly.
So do the schools encourage students to report bullying cases?
Oh yes, we do. And it's not just about reporting, but we are very intentional about setting a peer support structure. So it's not just about peer support leaders, but having a culture where students just watch out for one another. Students just look out for when a classmate or a schoolmate is not being fairly treated, or when there's hurtful behaviour being done to a friend, to be able to say, can I be an upstander rather than a bystander? Can I see that if something is wrong, that I surface it to my teacher? Or can I surface it to, if it's the school counsellor? In our Singapore schools, are there proper channels for the children that encourage the children to say, look, if you need to report something, these are the channels and these are the avenues? Oh yes, there are. So the children know actually the most immediate one would be to talk to the teacher, the form teacher. The year head engages the entire level regularly. So the children also, or the students also know that apart from the form teacher, I can also approach the year head. The school counsellor is introduced to the students at least the whole cohort once a year, at least. The school counsellor usually also visits the classes. So they do know that it's safe. It's safe to say, actually, if this is happening, can I report it? Where do I report it? It should be clear to all of them.
Do you think the issue of school bullying has come to the fore much more so recently?
I mean, if you compare it to when we were in school, I think the issue of bullying has become a lot more complex. A lot more complex because the social structures in the school have become a lot more complex. Also with the introduction of more prevalent use of technology and the online space. So the complexities are definitely something that we are feeling and we recognize. And if you ask me whether is the house burning down, I would say no. But is it enough of a concern for us to know that we want to give it some attention? The answer is yes. The answer is yes, because actually,
and where would you pay attention the most at this point in time?
Oh, okay. I'd be hard pressed to narrow down to one approach because actually we are fairly holistic in our approaches. And let me explain why. Usually you hear responses from MOE and we always say it's holistic because it's true. So with reference to bullying incidents themselves, Of course, we have that protocol for investigation. We have that protocol also in supporting schools in engaging parents and communicating with parents, and in also sharing with parents in a timely manner what's being done and what the progress of the investigations are. Can this be done more comprehensively? We can always see how we can communicate with parents more comprehensively. But in terms of dealing with the incident, that is something that is clearly being addressed. But what we seek to do in tackling the issue of bullying is also to go upstream. Because like what you mentioned earlier, when there are little scuffles here and there, or when it's just a small matter rather than a complex matter, these are things that we want to be able to address upstream. So it's in the educative efforts. It's in the character and citizenship education lessons.
That's the prevention piece of it.
It's prevention, and it's also heightening everybody's sensitivity to wanting to be an upstander. So in seeing that something is going on, that can I just stand up and correct it there and then? Can I stand up for my friend who's being treated in a hurtful manner, or can I actually surface this to the teacher? So in that area, of course, that we are encouraging a lot more. We started this work a number of years ago, and then of course in the prevention, that would be in establishing an environment in school that is welcoming, that is kind, that is compassionate, and that we build in students a lot more empathy and perspective taking, and helping to understand the impact of their words and their actions on their friends.
Do you think MOE is doing a good job in communicating with parents when incidents happen?
We try, and we are trying. But if you just walk with me through what happens when a case surfaces, because it's not just one set of parents that need to be communicated with, because when a case surfaces and there is an allegation that a bunch of children or one child is targeting another, there is the child that has been feeling the hurtful behaviour, and there is the child that has been accused of exhibiting that hurtful behaviour. You know, and in investigating, in trying to understand and piece together what has been going on, that takes time. That takes time, and that sometimes also takes a little bit of sensitivity. So a lot of times when these things are surfaced, and the school personnel, whether it's the year head, whether it's a form teacher, or whether even it's a school leader, engaging the parent of the child who has been hurt, there is the assurance that investigations will be undertaken. But sometimes that takes a little bit of time. Also because sometimes when there are many other parties involved, and sometimes that investigation is not done fast enough for the parent. And when it's not done fast enough for the parent, the lived reality of the parent is, why is the school taking so long? There is no communication. The school is not keeping me in touch with every step of the way. So we are seeking to establish actually how do we communicate with parents, while doing that, assuring the parent that if it takes a little bit more time, that's because actually there may be other complexities that the school is trying to deal with.
Is there a guideline, for example? Does the ministry say to all teachers and senior leaders in school that when such a case has been reported, you must revert to the parent of, for example, the victim, for want of a better word, within 48 hours?
That's challenging to promise. But revert with what information? That's the challenge, you see. So in terms of engagement, usually teachers, year heads, or the school leaders would engage the parent. So when it's surfaced, there is the initial engagement. After the initial engagement, of course, in terms of investigations, that may take time. And that also may take similar engagement with the parents of the ones that have been accused, for want of a better word, of that behaviour. So we do appreciate actually if we are given a little bit more space for schools to do that.
Well, what we're hearing from parents is that there is that initial contact or engagement when the incident happens, but after that, the follow-up is few and far in between. What is your response to that?
Well, as a system, I would say it's uneven on the ground. And can things be done better? I would say we do want to do better, and we do need to do better. Because I totally empathize with a parent whose child has been physically bullied in that sense, and that there's no communication for X number of days, for whatever reasons. So some schools are able to do that in a lot more timely way. Some schools may need a little bit more guidance and support, but as a system, we endeavour to do better. And as a system, we are clear that this is something that we want to be able to do better. But we also want to implore parents' understanding, because there are parents who reasonably expect some updates. There are parents who expect very, very, very frequent updates, which becomes a challenge on the system, because actually if my teachers need to be able to be given the space to investigate, to talk, to engage parents of the other children, understandably, sometimes like a daily update may not be a reasonable expectation. So we do want to be able to balance all sides, and fundamentally, we also recognize that it is building trust. It is building trust. It is helping parents to be able to trust that the school is doing what we need to, and being able to then provide timely, reasonable updates.
I saw with the issue of greater transparency, we do hear that a lot, and precisely because you want to build trust. I mean, the other part of it is you got to earn it.
Yeah.
Because the greater the transparency there is, then parents are more likely to say, right, you've already come clear. You put everything, or you put all your cards on the table, and what I can do now is to wait. So in terms of, and we hear that a lot, I think, unfortunately, when we go through the forums, online forums, as well as speaking to parents, their biggest bugbear, if you like, is the fact that why is the whole investigation so not transparent? How do you think MOE can do better on this front?
Well, in some cases, actually, for the teachers, it's not that they can't put all the cards on the table. In some cases, really, it's about the fact that I need time to investigate, and therefore I don't have all the cards yet. And when I get the cards, I will come back to the parent with the full range of information that the teachers may be able to find out. And we recognize that sometimes if that takes a little bit longer, and that consciousness of the anxiety on the part of the parents may not be as topmost on their minds as the desire to actually finish the investigation and actually also support the children that are involved. Sometimes then you realize that there's a greater time between initial engagement and the updates that come along the way. So in that respect, actually what we want to also help everybody recognize is to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the different parties involved. So for teachers to be able to understand that actually for the parents, the anxiety is real. And then to flip it over for parents to understand that the teachers are working on it, amongst the many other things that the teachers are also working on, and to be able to have that give and take. And I mean, most naturally, schools would be happy to share what our protocols are, what our approaches are when such cases are surfaced. But what schools also try to communicate with parents is that as we seek to address each case, there is the educative upstream effort that we are very conscious of, that schools undertake very seriously. And with each case that surfaces, there's also a complexity of issues that sometimes schools need to deal with. And sometimes schools would share some of these things with the parents, and there may also be sensitivities that sometimes the schools would need to exercise some judgment in terms of what would be appropriate to share and what would be not as appropriate because of the sensitivities of the other persons, for the other persons and other families involved.
What more needs to be done for you to bridge this gap?
Well, I shared earlier that we do have structures and processes in place to tackle each bullying incident that arises in school, and these are resources and guidelines that we give to schools. We also have educative preventive efforts. We also guide schools in the rehabilitative and the punitive aspects, as in the repercussions when bullying cases happen. But I have 350 schools and close to 30,000 teachers. And while these are things that we have in place as a system, we do need time for everybody to move along that direction so that everybody understands and implements this with fidelity on the ground. The other aspect that I think we started working on a number of years ago is really, it's not just about handling the bullying case when it surfaces, it's about going further upstream. It's about establishing a culture within the school that is what we call a caring and enabling one. It's about establishing a culture where there are peer supporters and the students come to school recognizing that they want to be able to lift their friends up rather than tear them down. It's establishing a culture where the children feel safe to surface things that trouble them. And this is something that we continue to work on, and we have put things in place already, and we will continue to support schools as they do this within their school leaders, as they continue to do this within their schools.